let's talk about Jeff, or so he is called in the book. Um, he's a great character. I love Jeff, and I think Jeff would be a great husband for anybody because Jeff is so he doesn't question you, you know? He's just like, "Yeah, I know this is happening to you. I'm supporting you. I'm here." But as it would with anybody else, it took a toll, right? It took a toll on him. And so, as supportive as he was still starting to act out because you were distancing him, you
Mhm.
know, you were. And so he's trying to figure out what's going on here as well. He needed help too,
Right.
right? And he believed you with Anne. When you told him how you felt so supported. I mean, I love Jeff. Let's talk
Let's
more about Jeff.
you know, Jeff's incredible.
Hmm.
And he and I had been together since we were 15 years old. We knew each other from the seventh grade, and we just knew each other so well, and we knew
Yeah.
what each other was capable of. He never questioned that I was receiving a spiritual calling, nor
Hmm.
was he threatened by Anne. He knew she was a mother to me and that I really needed to open my heart to her
Right.
in order to find myself and to figure out what the calling was about.
Mm.
We just knew each other. He was there. He supported me. He certainly acted out, uh, but yes.
Yeah. And he got a girlfriend, didn't he?
he he did. So yes. One morning, after months of me dodging his sexual advances,
Hmm.
he announced to me that he was going to get a girlfriend.
And rightly so.
And rightfully so. And a few hours later, he came home with a dog.
Oh, I love that dog.
Yeah, she was actually a he, and we named him Max. So we both had our loves, and it was so special. When he comes home, the dog gets out, the dog's licking me, licking him, and he looked at me and he kissed me and he said, I'll wait for you as long as it takes.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, man, Jeff took my heart. He
Yeah,
did.
yeah, good guy.
So, in the beginning, the messages were more directly at you, right? To help you through your healing, to get to the point where you could be open to the bigger picture, right? So, the messages started to take on a universal kind of feel to it, right? So, how were those different for you? I mean, you were still hearing something, right?
They were very different. Towards the end of this emotional cleansing process,
Hmm.
awakening, whatever you want to call it, I went through a period where my consciousness was rapidly expanding.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'd had enough of the whole awakening thing. I was
Done.
seriously,
Thanks.
exactly, I was seriously praying for it to stop.
Yeah.
But instead, it intensified.
Right.
It just got worse. And what I had at that point was called a Kundalini experience. And
Yeah.
apparently, there is a spiritual energy that is latent in our spine.
Hmm.
And when it's released through the body, it rapidly opens the heart and the mind. And it allows you to see our interconnectedness to
Hmm.
everybody.
Right.
It takes you beyond the ego, and beyond the individual self. At the time, I didn't know what a Kundalini experience was.
I,
It was just happening to me. But again, I was so remarkably guided on this journey that when the experience started, I was with a friend of mine's mother who was a retired professor of genetics from San Diego State.
yeah.
And she had been studying the process of spiritual transformation for the past decades. So when this all started happening to me, she was able to normalize it right away. And what she explained to me is that there is a time of this rapid expansion
Right.
that prepares you for a divine encounter. And in many cultures, it's considered or called the dark night of the soul.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just funny that a genetics professor would be exploring the whole spirituality realm. That was always interesting to me. Um, so you were, most people, you would think, would love to have that one-on-one time with God. I know me personally, I mean, I feel like I have that one-on-one with him all the time. But most people would really love that kind of direct interaction, but you were really pulling away from it, weren't you?
Well, I think it's difficult for many people who had been abused as children to feel secure with a power greater than their own. The
Sure.
idea of an encounter like that felt like it was going to harm me, like I would be annihilated by it.
Wow. Because it's huge, right?
Yeah.
And when you're a kid and your parents are huge, it's the same kind of feeling, I guess.
Well, your
Interesting.
relationship with your parents is your first relationship with God.
Yeah,
It is a relationship with a higher power. And so,
right.
that goes south on you. It's very difficult to get to a place where a spiritual calling is going to be a positive thing.
No
It was
kidding.
really quite frightening.
But it didn't annihilate you.
No, it did not annihilate me. But I will tell you, it was also not full of love or light either.
Hmm.
Uh, a few weeks after the Kundalini energy, Jeff had taken my son on a fishing trip, and the girls and I were home for the weekend. And that night, I felt like I was being elevated, almost like I was in a high speed elevator. And the top of my head, the crown of my head, felt like it was opening, much the way a cervix opens during labor.
Hmm.
And then I was, I saw what was a very bright, brilliant light. It appeared next to me, and an inaudible voice in my mind summons me to write.
Oh boy.
That's when I received the purpose behind the calling.
Oh Lord. Was there ever any point that you thought, I'm hallucinating? I'm hallucinating. This is not real. I mean, at that point, were you still trying to fight it, by giving excuses for what it could be?
No, at that point, it was so undeniable. And I was so completely humbled to the core by the experience.
Yeah.
It was grander. I mean, I felt like I was an ant at the foot of a king. That's how big it was.
Wow.
And did I feel like I was hallucinating? No. It was everything that was happening to me was so clear. I was fully alert. I had all my senses about me, and there was nothing distorted in any way about the experience.
Hmm.
I still didn't like it. The
Yeah.
level of consciousness that I was in, I could tell it was straining my mind and my body,
Right.
but it was the most real and clearest experience I've ever had.
So in that experience, you were told to write down the messages. Is that right?
Yes, and the words I was given, I can tell you, were not my own. It's nothing that I would have said, and it's not words that I would typically use. The messages came through me, but they are not of me.
So what are they, and how did you interpret them?
Well, the experience of the top of my crown opening, the light appearing, and me being summoned to write happened over 3 consecutive nights.
Okay.
So you read it, and you know that the first night was an announcement that it's the dawn of a new consciousness. It has begun, and that it's a delicate time for us. We will receive what we need to heal, but this is the beginning of a delicate time.
Right.
I understood that to mean that the awakening process that I had been going through was starting to happen globally. And I think that there is evidence of that today. The unresolved past does seem to be coming to the surface to be healed. And I do believe it is part of this cleansing that we're going through.
So what happened on the second night?
On the second night, the same experience. I had the same experience, but that night I was given what sounded like an antichrist message.
Oh,
That there would be a leader who would emerge that will claim to be of God, but he will have prejudices. Do not follow prejudice was heavily emphasized to me that night, along with where to find the true leaders and how to recognize them.
and is that a
Do you?
belief you previously held?
No, not really. We live in a predominantly Christian culture, so I know what an antichrist is.
Mm.
but I never really put much stock in it.
Do you now?
Yes, I do. I don't know if it will happen in my lifetime, but those messages were so profound. And I was, again, just so humbled to the core when I received them. There was absolutely no question in my mind that they came from the God of our creation, regardless of what you call that power.
Wow, that's big. That's big. I remember from the book that the last night you were given a pretty horrific vision, right? It was apocalyptic, where millions of souls were, it was the apocalypse, right? Millions of souls were rising. And in the book, it was, you said, it was the greatest fear I'd ever known. Um, then you were summoned to write again. What were you told?
That was horrific. The scene that I was shown was absolutely horrific. It is not a place we want to go. And after the scene, because I was literally curled up in my closet, I just felt like I was a frightened animal in the midst of this horrific apocalypse.
Yeah.
And then it stopped. And the message came in again. And it said, this is not necessary.
Mm.
Change your individual consciousness by choice. There was time to heal. There was time to breed the strong. There was time to avoid the apocalypse. And there was time for a gentle change.
Interesting.
It was very, very clear to me that we have some choice here. And we are going through this transformation. It is the birth of a new consciousness. I think that we will become aware that we are ultimately all one being, and that will become within our everyday conscious awareness. But getting there, I think, could be very tumultuous if we don't commit ourselves to taking our own path.
So let me ask you something. You got these messages how many years ago, right? 20 years ago, maybe more?
25 years ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So do we still have that time? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
These messages, and I believe that time is not the same as we experience it. Time is different,
Mhm.
experienced in different realms. Um, are we still okay? Do we still have time to make those changes? And how do we do that?
I think we do. I mean, I've got to believe that the intelligence that organized all of this knew that, this was not going to get out for a while. After I received all this, I kept saying, what do I do next? What do I do next? And, although I wrote the story as it happened and
Mhm.
I self-published a book at the time, it really wasn't going anywhere. And when I said, I need help, the only message I was getting was raise your children, raise your children, raise your children.
Mm.
So it wasn't until really recently when we went through COVID that it all came back to me. And it was clear that this needs to be expressed now. So the timing of things is not necessarily my own. Um, I would hope that that means that we still have time, and I do believe that we do. But I also think it's happening.
Right,
This isn't a change that is about to happen. It is happening, and I
right.
think the way we manage it is really, what's going to make a difference right now.
Okay. It's frightening, really. So
It's frightening, but it's not. It's hopeful.
it's
Frightening
hopeful.
in what it could be, and it's very hopeful in what it could be. I think that if we do the work now, if we protect our children are going to be at the brunt of this.
Yeah,
If we raise them to be healthy and we love them for who they are, and we don't try to change them, we don't try to make them an expression of ourselves, we
right.
don't try, or we don't abuse them or neglect them in any way, they will be healthy, they will be strong, they will be able to tolerate the changes in consciousness that they'll be going through as a result of that. But the children are our key in this. And protecting them and protecting their mind and their body and their hearts is everything. We need those resources to make it through this next, part of our human evolution.
Right, right. And so I think that that almost answers the next question. Why were you chosen? why did it go through you as opposed to the Dalai Lama or somebody that is higher level? Who is Dawn Kohler? That, the big G is like, why you?
I have asked myself that, Kathy, a million times.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the only thing that I've been able to come up with is, I had this history. I was raped as a child. I was exploited. And that is just nothing short of soul murder.
Right.
But I came back. Your spirit never dies. And it is always trying to heal you. And those of us that choose to heal will help create a gentle change into a very peaceful future.
Hmm.
And the ones that don't have the potential to cause us the most harm. I have been a product of both. So maybe that is why. Maybe that's why I was chosen to tell this story. It's really the only thing I've been able to come up with.
Yeah, it makes sense, though. It makes sense when you talk about raising healthy, strong children and doing right by your children and loving them and allowing them to be who they were or they are. You did not have that experience. And so you more than anybody could relate to that because you came around and were a wonderful mother. And you did love your children. And so you're an example, maybe.
Well, thank you. And I'd love it to have gone to the Dalai Lama. This isn't easy. It's not a job you want to sign up for. It really isn't. It has been more of a life burden than anything else. So Dalai Lama, take it on.
DL, get it.
I'm good with that.
Wow. Dawn, what a fabulous time together we've had this morning. I can't thank you enough for sharing your experience. And honestly, it was an honor to narrate the book, and it's an honor to interview you now. And just thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your contribution to this story. Thank you.
Absolutely. You bet. You've been listening to my interview with Dawn Kohler, author of The Messages. You can find The Messages anywhere books are sold. You can find the audiobook on audible.com. To connect with Dawn, go to her author website at www.dawnkohler.com. DAWNKOHLER.com. Thanks again.